Seo-jin was on one knee on the studio floor when Elizabeth walked through the door. Not proposing. He was crouching over something, an envelope that had been slid under the door, plain white, her name written on the front in the handwriting she did not recognize. He had arrived before her that morning, let himself in with the key she had given him 3 weeks ago, found the envelope, and had not yet opened it. He was holding it by the edges when she walked in, and the look on his face, controlled, careful, the particular expression that meant he had already assessed the situation and was now managing his response, made her stomach drop before he said a single word. "This was under the door," he said. She set down her bag, crossed the studio, took it from him. Inside was not a threat. Not this time. Not the Shin network, not a warning, not anything from the world she had already survived twice. It was a letter from the Meridian Gallery in Hong Kong, handwritten, on heavy, cream paper from the director herself. A 2-year residency offer, the most prestigious contemporary art platform in Asia. Full funding, complete creative freedom, a studio 3 times the size of this one, and a single line at the bottom of the letter that stopped her breathing entirely. "We have been watching your work since displacement. We believe you are the most important emerging voice in diaspora art today. We want to give you the space to prove it." She read it twice. Then she looked up at Seo-jin. He was watching her face with the expression of a man reading a verdict. He had clearly already read it over her shoulder. He knew exactly what it said. Neither of them spoke for a long moment. Then his phone rang. He looked at the screen. Something shifted in his face, a different kind of controlled. "I have to take this," he said. He stepped into the hallway. She heard his voice drop into the register that meant business. Not the warm register, the cold one, the Empire. Register she had not heard in weeks. She stood alone in the studio with the letter in her hands and the Hong Kong offer and the sound of Seo-jin's voice in the hallway, conducting what sounded like a serious and urgent conversation in Korean, and the specific disorientation of 2 enormous things arriving simultaneously before she had processed either one. He came back in 4 minutes. He looked at her. "I have to go," he said. "There is a situation with the Yongsan development. One of the permit contacts has been arrested. My lawyers need me now." She looked at him. "Is it the Shin network?" "No." He was already moving toward the door. "Something else. Something I have to handle." He stopped. He turned back. He looked at the letter in her hands. He looked at her face. He said, "We talk tonight. About all of it. I promise." He kissed her once, brief, certain, and he was gone. She stood in the empty studio, the letter in one hand, the sound of the door closing. Soul going. On outside like nothing had happened. She sat on the studio floor and she read the letter a 3rd time, and she understood with absolute clarity that the next decision she made was going to define the rest of her life, and she had no idea what it was. Comment right now. Hong Kong or Seoul, because the comment section is already divided and this story has not even started yet. Subscribe and stay locked in, because what Seo-jin is hiding is going to make you furious. Keep watching. The situation with the Yongsan development was not a permit problem. Park Do-jun told him the truth in the car, calm, direct, the way Do-jun always delivered information that required action. A competitor in the legitimate real estate sector, a man named Hwang Tae-sung who had been watching Seo-jin's transition from Shadow Empire to clean development with the specific interest of someone who saw opportunity in the gap, had moved against the Yongsan project. Not criminally. Legally. Hwang had purchased the remaining minority stake in the development through a holding company Seo-jin's lawyers had not tracked, giving him enough leverage to freeze the permits pending a partnership dispute resolution that could take 6 to 18 months. It was clean. It was legal. It was designed to either force Seo-jin into a disadvantageous buyout or kill the project entirely. "He's been planning this for 4 months, Do-jun said. Seo-jin looked out the car window at Seoul passing by. How did we miss the holding company? He used 3 separate shell structures. Our due diligence stopped at 2. A pause. Boss, this is the first major attack on the legitimate side. Not the shadow side, the legitimate side. Seo-jin understood what Dojin was not saying. The Shadow Empire had protection. 30 years of carefully maintained deterrence, the folders on the restaurant table, the specific ruthlessness of a man who knew where every body was buried. The legitimate development business had none of that. He had been building it clean deliberately, and someone had noticed that clean meant unprotected in the ways that had always protected him before. What does he want? Seo-jin asked. A meeting. This afternoon. Dojun paused. He specifically requested that you come alone. No lawyers, no Dojun. Another pause. He knows about Elizabeth. Seo-jin went very still. What does he know? That she is the curator behind the Displacement series. That Meridian Gallery in Hong Kong offered her the residency this morning. That if she takes it... Dojun stopped. Say it. That if she takes it, you lose the only person in Seoul who has been making you look like a man who has genuinely changed. His words passed through his assistant. He believes your clean development pivot is tied to her presence, and without her influence, you will drift back to old methods. He wants to use that leverage. Seo-jin said nothing for a long time. The car moved through Seoul. Then he said, "Set up the meeting." Alone? Alone. He looked at Dojun. And do not tell Elizabeth any of this. Dojun looked at him. Boss? That is the first thing she would tell you not to do. I know, Seo-jin said. Set up the meeting. He met Hwang Tae-sung at a restaurant in Yongsan at 2 in the afternoon. Hwang was in his early 50s, heavy-set, confident with the specific confidence of a man who had done his research and believed he held every card. He shook Seo-jin's hand warmly, as if this were a collegial lunch, and ordered expensive food, and spoke for 20 minutes about the development landscape in Seoul, with the enthusiasm of a man who wanted to appear reasonable before he was not. Then he said, I want 40% of the Yongsan project. Seo-jin looked at him. That's my number, Hwang said. 40%, a seat on the board, and my holding company's stake absorbed at market rate. He picked up his chopsticks. In exchange, I unfreeze the permits. The project proceeds. Everyone wins. And if I decline, Seo-jin said. Hwang smiled. Then the permit dispute runs its course. 18 months minimum. By which point the financing window closes, the contractor walks, and the project dies. He paused. I have done my research on you, Kang. I know what you used to be. I know what you are trying to become. I think that is admirable. He did not sound like he thought it was admirable, but the legitimate world has its own predators. You are new here. I am not. Seo-jin looked at him for a long time, long enough for Hwang to become slightly uncertain beneath the surface of his confidence. Then Seo-jin said, My lawyers will contact yours by end of business today. Hwang nodded, satisfied, assuming this meant capitulation. What Seo-jin's lawyers sent by end of business was not a buyout agreement. It was a full forensic audit request for Hwang's holding company structure, citing irregularities in the permit acquisition process that suggested possible corruption of the city official who had approved the stake transfer. The audit request was simultaneously filed with 3 separate oversight bodies. Hwang called that evening. His voice had changed. You said your lawyers would be in contact. They were, Seo-jin said. This is not what I know what you expected, Seo-jin said. You expected the old version of me, the one who would threaten or pay or maneuver in the dark. A pause. I'm not him anymore, so I did it differently. Everything I filed is legal. Everything in those audit requests is accurate. If your acquisition was clean, it will survive scrutiny. If it wasn't, he let that sit. I told you I'm building something clean. That means I fight clean too. He ended the call. He sat in his office for a long time afterward. He had handled it. It would resolve. The audit alone would be enough to make Hwang settle, rather than face examination. But what sat with him was not the victory. It was Dojun's voice. In the car, He knows about Elizabeth. He believes your clean development pivot is tied to her presence. And then his own voice. Do not tell Elizabeth. He had made the decision in the car because he did not want her to feel responsible for something that was not hers to carry. He had made it to protect her. And now, sitting alone in his office, he heard clearly what Halmayoni would say if she knew. The same thing she had said about his father. He thought he was protecting us from the wrong things. He picked up his phone. He called Elizabeth. I have to tell you something, he said when she answered. I should have told you this morning, and I didn't, and I am telling you now. He told her everything. Hwang Tai-sung, the holding company, the meeting, the audit filing, the thing Hwang had said about her. All of it. In order. The silence on her end when he finished was not the processing silence. It was the other kind, the kind that preceded something direct. You told Dojin not to tell me, she said. Yes. Why? Because I didn't want you to feel... Seo-jin, her voice was not angry. It was something more serious than angry. What did we say? About the truth, from the beginning of everything. What did we say? He closed his eyes. That it was the only thing I owed you without exception. Yes. A pause. I am not a person you protect by keeping things from. I am a person you protect by trusting with the things that are hard. Another pause. Do you understand the difference? Yes, he said, and he meant it with the specific weight of a man who had just made the mistake his father made and caught it in time. I'm sorry. I know you are, she said. Her voice softened. Not much, just enough. Handle the Hwang situation. And next time, I am not someone you manage. I am someone you tell. She hung up. He sat with the phone in his hand, and the specific feeling of a lesson that had arrived before it became permanent damage, and the understanding that becoming a different man was not a thing you finished. It was a thing you kept doing. Every day. Even when you got it wrong. Especially then. Elizabeth did not make a decision about Hong Kong that day. Or the next. She threw herself into a new canvas instead. Not soul mourning, not anything connected to what she was feeling. Deliberately not that. A technical exercise. Color studies. The kind of work that kept her hands busy while her mind did what her mind needed to do. She painted for 12 hours. She ate standing at the counter. She did not call Adana. She did not call Nana Ngozi. She needed this one to be entirely hers before it became anyone else's. What she kept returning to, circling it the way you circle something that has teeth, was not the choice itself. It was the fact that she could not determine whether staying was an act of strength or an act of fear dressed as strength. That distinction had mattered enormously to her since the night she left Marcus's apartment in 40 minutes, and it still mattered now. She would not stay for the wrong reason. She would not go for the wrong reason either. The reason had to be clean. On the third night, Adana called, not texted. Called. Hong Kong, Elizabeth said when she picked up. Hong Kong, Adana confirmed. Tell me what you are actually afraid of. I already know what I'm afraid of, Elizabeth said. I'm afraid I can't tell the difference between choosing a life and disappearing into one. Adana was quiet for a moment. And have you considered, she said, that staying might be the braver choice? Not the safer one, the braver one. That it might take more courage to stand in the middle of something good and say, this is what I choose, than to leave for a platform that will applaud you. Elizabeth went very still. That is not the argument I expected from you. I know, Adana said. I have been thinking about it for 3 days. A pause. Elizabeth, Hong Kong will offer you a platform. Seoul has already given you something no platform can. It gave you back yourself. You found yourself here, in this neighborhood, in this studio, in this... She stopped. Say it, Elizabeth said. In this man, Adana said. I am saying it. in this specific, difficult, complicated, honest man who called me 4 days ago, not to ask my permission, not to ask me to convince you, just to tell me that he wanted me to know he had told you the truth about the Huang situation, because he believed you deserved to know, and he wanted me to know he understood that. He called me, Elizabeth, unprompted, just to tell me the truth about his own mistake. A pause. I have never received a phone call like that from any man in your life, including the ones I liked. Elizabeth sat in the silence of her studio for a long time. He called you, she said. He called me, Adana said. Now stop painting whatever you are definitely painting right now and go make the real thing. Elizabeth looked at the technical canvas she had been hiding inside for 3 days. Then she set it aside. She pulled out the largest canvas she owned. She picked up her brush. She did not stop until morning. That is the moment everything changed, and you are not ready for what she painted. Subscribe right now, like this video, and drop a comment. Was Seo-jin calling Adana the most unexpectedly romantic thing in this entire story? Because my comment section has never been more divided. Keep watching. She called him at 7 in the morning. Come to the studio. He arrived in 20 minutes. She opened the door, paint covered, awake for 24 hours, electric. She stepped aside without speaking. He walked in and saw it. The largest canvas she had ever made. The background was the pale gold of early Seoul morning light. Not the dark, not the grief palette, something entirely new. And in the center, 2 figures at a window, side by side, looking at the same city. Not symbolic, recognizable. A Korean man and a black woman standing together in the ordinary, extraordinary fact of 2 people who have chosen the same view. She called it Seoul morning. He stood in front of it for a long time. Then, you stayed up all night? Yes. Why? Because at 3 in the morning, I stopped being afraid and I needed to paint it, while I could still feel exactly what that was. He turned. Hong Kong? I'm not going. Clean. Certain. No hesitation in it. Not because of you. Because of me. Because when I painted this, the only thing I could see clearly was this window. This city. This life. She held his gaze. I am not settling. I am not afraid. I am arriving. At the thing I want. On my own terms. She paused. I need you to know the difference. He crossed the studio. Took her face in both hands. Paint and exhaustion and all. I have been sitting with an empty bowl at Halmioni's stall for 3 nights, telling myself I would let you go if that was what your life needed. He looked at her. I meant it. But Elizabeth, I am so glad you're staying. She laughed, wet-eyed and certain. I know. I could tell from the empty bowl. Halmioni told you. Halmioni tells me everything, she said. Then she pulled back. Just slightly. I have to ask you something. Take your time. Ask. The empire, the dismantling. Did you do it for me? He started to answer. She stopped him. Don't answer fast, because if any fraction of that decision was made because of what you thought I needed, I need to know. I am not the reason you dismantle 30 years of your life. He was quiet for a long time. The real consideration, not the reassuring answer. She waited. No, he said finally. And yes. He looked at the painting. You were not the reason I decided. You were the reason I could hear the decision clearly enough to make it. He looked at her. You asked me questions about what I was tired of, about what I was building for. The answers were already in me. You made it quiet enough to hear them. She absorbed this, then took his hand. Okay. Okay. I believe you, she said. I just needed to know it was yours. He looked at her for a long moment. You are the most demanding person I have ever met. I know, she said. You should have thought about that before you whispered in my ear at a gala. He laughed. She leaned into him. Outside, Seoul went on around them, brilliant and indifferent and entirely theirs. What neither of them knew, what was already in motion while they stood together in the morning light of the studio, was that the Meridian Gallery director in Hong Kong had not taken no for an answer. The counteroffer arrived 3 days later. Not by letter this time, by personal visit. Dr. Clara Shin, the director of the Meridian Gallery, Korean-American, 52 years old, the woman who had built the most important contemporary Asian art platform of the last decade, appeared at Elizabeth's gallery space in Hongdae on a Tuesday afternoon with no appointment and a calm certainty that she would be received. Elizabeth received her because you received Dr. Clara Shin. That was simply what you did. They sat in the gallery space with 2 cups of tea, and the paintings of the displacement series on the walls around them, and Dr. Shin looked at the work for a long time before she spoke. "I know you declined," she said. "I'm here because I believe you made the decision for the wrong reason, and I want to make you an offer that removes that reason." Elizabeth looked at her. "You don't know my reason." "I know enough," Dr. Shin said. "You are in love with someone in Seoul. You are afraid that leaving means losing something you cannot replace, and so you chose to stay." She paused. "But consider, what if you didn't have to choose?" She placed a revised proposal on the table between them. Not a 2-year residency requiring relocation, a 3-year partnership, 6 months in Hong Kong per year, 6 months wherever Elizabeth chose to base herself. The platform, the funding, the reach, none of the relocation. A structure specifically designed, Dr. Shin said without embarrassment, to make the choice between ambition and love obsolete. "I have watched too many women in this field make that choice unnecessarily," Dr. Shin said. "I redesigned the residency structure 3 years ago specifically to stop asking them to." She looked at Elizabeth. "The question is not Hong Kong or Seoul. The question is whether you want this platform." Elizabeth looked at the proposal, then at the paintings around her, then at the woman across from her. "Why do you want me specifically?" she asked. "Because you painted grief and the whole world recognized itself," Dr. Shin said simply. "And because I have a feeling you are about to start painting joy, and I think joy painted with the honesty you bring to grief is going to change things." She paused. "I don't want to miss it. I don't want the world to miss it." Elizabeth picked up the proposal. She read every page. Dr. Shin drank her tea and did not rush her. When Elizabeth looked up, she said, "I need 48 hours. "You have them," Dr. Shin said. She stood. She looked at the paintings one more time, at displacement, at what the dark remembers. "She came back from the dark, didn't she?" she said quietly. Not quite to Elizabeth, mostly to the paintings. "Yes," Elizabeth said. "Good," Dr. Shin said. "Bring me the light." She left. Elizabeth sat alone in the gallery for a long time. Then she called Seo-jin. She told him everything. The visit, the revised proposal, the 6 months here, 6 months there. She told him clearly and completely, because that was what they had promised each other, and she was not going to be the one to break it. He was quiet for a moment when she finished. Then, "What do you want to do? I want to know what you think." "No," he said. "You want my blessing, which is different from what I think. Tell me what you want." She looked at the paintings. "I want both," she said. "I want Seoul and I want the platform, and I want you, and I want the work to be seen. I want all of it." "Then say yes," he said. "Elizabeth, say yes. It means 6 months apart every year." "I know what it means." His voice was steady. "I also know that a woman who turned down a 2-year residency to stay in Seoul and then had a different version of the same offer appear 3 days later is being told something by the universe and should probably listen." A pause. "Say yes. I will still be here. The stall will still be here. Halmione will set out the bowl every night, whether you are here or not." Another pause. "But do not make yourself smaller for me. Not ever. I will not survive being the reason you did that." She was quiet for a long moment. "You sound very certain." I am terrified, he said. I am telling you yes, while being terrified. That is different from being certain. She felt something move through her chest that she did not have a category for. The specific feeling of being loved correctly, of someone wanting the full version of you, even when the full version costs them something. Okay, she said. Okay, he said. Yes, she said. I'm saying yes. The silence that followed was not empty. It was the sound of two people standing on either side of a decision that was going to change the shape of their lives, and choosing it anyway. Nana Ngozi arrived on a Saturday morning. Nobody told Elizabeth. Seo-jin had been planning it for 3 weeks. The call to Houston, the flights, the hotel, the single conversation with Nana Ngozi in which he had introduced himself without a screen between them and said, I would like to bring you to Seoul. Elizabeth needs you to see what she built here, and I need to ask you something in person. Nana Ngozi had listened to the full proposal, then said, What do you need to ask me? He had said, I need to ask you in person. Not because I am afraid of your answer, because you deserve to be asked properly. She had been quiet for a moment. Then, I packed last week. I was waiting for someone to ask correctly. Elizabeth opened her studio door at 9 on a Saturday and found her grandmother in the hallway in a deep green wrapper with a suitcase and the expression of a woman who had traveled 12 hours and refused to show it. Elizabeth's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Nana Ngozi looked past her at the studio. Seoul morning enormous on the far wall, the morning light coming through the south window, the whole life her granddaughter had built from one shattered champagne glass. She took it all in. Then she took Elizabeth's face in both hands, the real hands, present. Here, she said in Yoruba, I see what you made. I see who you became. I have never been so proud of anything. Elizabeth broke. Not the controlled tears, or the moved tears. The deep releasing cry of a woman who has been strong in every room for 2 years, letting go of the weight of all of it in the presence of the one person in whose arms strength was never required. Nana Ngozi held her, said nothing. The holding was the whole conversation. Seo-jin appeared at the end of the hallway. He had been downstairs, giving them the moment deliberately. He stood and watched, and did not move. Nana Ngozi looked up over Elizabeth's shoulder and found him. She studied him in person now, no screen, no distance. Read the way he was standing, the restraint. The expression he wore when he looked at Elizabeth that he did not know was visible from the end of a hallway. She nodded once, slowly, the real nod. Then she said to Elizabeth, still holding her face, Tell him to come. Elizabeth looked up, found Seo-jin at the end of the hall. Come, she said. He walked down the hallway. He stopped in front of Nana Ngozi. She looked at him for a long moment. Then she said, You came to get me properly. You said you needed to ask me something in person. Yes, he said. Then ask. He reached into his jacket pocket. He produced a small box, not a ring box, something else, something flat, and he held it out to her. She opened it. Inside was a key, plain, unremarkable. It is the key to this building, he said. I bought it 6 weeks ago. I put it in Elizabeth's name. She does not know yet. He held Nana Ngozi's gaze. I am asking your blessing, not to marry her. That is a conversation I will have with her when the time is right and in the way she deserves. I am asking your blessing to love her correctly, for as long as she will let me. The key is, so you know that wherever Elizabeth is in the world, she has a building in Seoul with her name on it. She will never again be in a city that does not belong to her. He paused. I am asking you, is that enough to begin with? The studio was completely silent. Elizabeth, who had heard every word, had both hands pressed over her mouth. Her eyes were flooding. She was making no sound. Nana Ngozi looked at the key in the box for a long time. Then she looked at Seo-jin. Then at her granddaughter. Then she closed the box, pressed it back into his hands. Give it to her yourself, she said. Look her in the eye when you do it. That is how it should be done. He turned. He looked at Elizabeth. She was looking at him with the expression of a woman who had not seen this coming. Not any of it. Not the key, not the building, not the question to her grandmother, and who was in the process of understanding in real time that she was loved in a way she had not previously known was available to her. You bought the building, she said. Her voice was not steady. 6 weeks ago, he said, while I was deciding about Hong Kong. Yes. While I was deciding whether to stay. Yes. He held her gaze. Because whether you stayed or not, I wanted you to always have somewhere in Seoul with your name on it. That was not about keeping you here. It was about making sure you always had the choice. She stared at him. That is, she said slowly, the most Kang Seo-jin thing you have ever done. Yes, he agreed. It is also, she said, the most romantic thing anyone has ever done for me in my entire life. Nanangozi, behind them, picked up her suitcase. Now, she said briskly, someone should show me the city, and then I want to meet the other grandmother. I have things to give her. Halmeoni's pojangmacha, all 4 of them together. Evening, the exchange of spice containers. Nanangozi's pepper soup blend to Halmeoni, Halmeoni's teokbokki blend to Nanangozi, with a sticky note label in Korean and English that Seo-jin had translated. The 2 women eating with the focused attention of professionals assessing each other's work. Nanangozi producing a fork without drama. Halmeoni producing a fork from under the counter before she asked. She had researched this visitor, and setting it down with the expression of a professional who anticipates. And then, the moment nobody saw coming. Halmeoni set down her ladle. She came out from behind the counter, something she had done only once before in this entire story, the night Elizabeth arrived back from Abuja. She stood in front of Seo-jin. She looked at him for a long moment with the expression of a woman who has been waiting to say something for 30 years and has finally found the right moment. She spoke in Korean, directly to him. No translation for the room, just the 2 of them, grandmother and grandson, the full private weight of it. When she finished, his face had done something Elizabeth had never seen it do before, and would not see it do again. It had gone completely young. Not the controlled face, not the open face, not even the unguarded face. Something older and more essential than all of those. The face of the boy from Itaewon before the world taught him what he needed to become. Elizabeth looked at Nanangozi. Nanangozi looked at Elizabeth. Neither of them asked what was said. Some conversations belonged only to the people having them. Seo-jin nodded once. Then he put his arms around Halmeoni and held her, briefly, completely, the embrace of a man returning something he had owed for a very long time. Halmeoni patted his back. Once, firmly. Then she went back behind her counter and picked up her ladle and said to the room in her first English of the entire story, "Eat. Everything is getting cold." Nanangozi raised her fork. "This woman," she said to Elizabeth, "is my favorite person in Seoul." Halmeoni looked at Nanangozi. "Me too," she said. The same 2 words, the same dry, certain delivery, and then she almost smiled. Not quite, just the architecture of it, and went back to her pots. They ate. Nobody performed anything. It was 4 people in orange tent light eating together, with the spring night coming through the open stall and the city going on around them, and none of them needing it to be more than what it was. At some point, Seo-jin reached over and moved a piece of teokbokki from his bowl to Elizabeth's. She looked at it. She looked at him. He was not looking at her. He was watching Nanangozi attempt to explain pepper soup to Halmeoni through gesture, while Halmeoni listened with the focused interest of a professional, encountering a technique she had not considered. His hand stayed beside her bowl. She put her hand over his. He turned. "I love you," she said. Just that. Straight. No architecture around it. Just the truth delivered the way he had taught her the truth should always be delivered, clearly, without management, looking directly at the person it was meant for. He looked at her. The angular jaw, the open eyes, the face of a man who had survived himself and was standing on the other side of it with his whole unguarded heart visible. "I know," he said. "I have known since the night you set your champagne glass down so gently. It didn't make a sound, and walked out of that gala like you owned everything you were leaving behind." She stared at him. "That was the night we met." "Yes." "You knew that night?" "I knew you were the most extraordinary person I had ever been in a room with. The rest took time to become the right words." He held her gaze. "I love you, Elizabeth." Nanangozi picked up her fork and continued eating with the serenity of a woman whose work is entirely done. Halmeoni said something short behind them. "What did she say?" Elizabeth asked. Not steady, not apologizing for it. "She said," Seo-jin said, "the tteokbokki is getting cold. You can be in love and also eat." Elizabeth laughed. Nanangozi laughed. The tent was full of it, unperformed, unarchitected, the specific warmth of people who are exactly where they are supposed to be. Incheon Airport, the next morning, Nana. Gozi said goodbye to Halmeoni first. Halmeoni produced a second container of her spice blend, a new one, sealed, labeled. Nanangozi received it with both hands and bowed her head. The exchange was even, more than even. Then Nanangozi took Seo-jin's hands in hers. "You came to get me properly," she said. "You planned it quietly. You did not make it about yourself." She held his gaze. "My granddaughter is too large for most rooms. Too honest. Too much. You built her the right room." She pressed his hands. "Now build yourself one inside it. Not beside it. Inside it. Together. Do you understand?" "Yes, Ma." She released him. She looked at Elizabeth last, the rough, warm hands on her face one final time. "You painted your grief and the whole world recognized itself," she said. "Now go paint your joy. The world needs that even more." She kissed her forehead. She picked up her bag. She walked toward security, immaculate, unhurried, the posture of a woman who has accomplished everything she came to do. She did not look back. Halmeoni put one small hand on Elizabeth's arm, patted it once, then said, in English, careful and deliberate, "Good girl." Elizabeth covered Halmeoni's hand with hers. Seo-jin put his arm around her shoulders. She leaned in. The three of them stood in the departures hall while Seoul moved around them, indifferent and brilliant and completely theirs, and Elizabeth felt, for the first time in the entire story, the specific feeling of a person who has arrived. Not at the end, at the beginning of something that had finally, after everything, found its right shape. 11 at night, Mapo-gu, the pojangmacha, 2 stools, 2 bowls, Halmeoni at her pots, the orange light doing what it always did. Elizabeth and Seo-jin walking down the narrow street toward it, his hand in hers, her shoulder against his arm, the easy, unperformed rhythm of 2 people who have stopped needing to be anything except what they are. They sat down. Halmeoni set chopsticks in front of each of them. She went back to her pots. She said nothing. She did not need to. They talked about small things, what Nanangozi would do with the tteokbokki spice blend, what Halmeoni's reaction would be the first time she tasted pepper soup, what Elizabeth would paint first now that she was starting from joy, what the public art spaces of Seo-jin's clean development would look like with her eye behind them. "You want me to curate your buildings," she said. "I want you to make the spaces worth entering," he said. "There is a difference." She looked at him. "That is the most romantic thing you have said since the key." The bar was low, he said. "It was not," she said. He almost smiled. She stole a piece of tteokbokki from his bowl. He let her. Outside, the spring night was finally and genuinely warm. The cold done, the season honest, And Seoul moved through its night around them with its 10 million private dramas, and its brilliant in different light, and the orange tent on the narrow Mapogu street glowed exactly as it always had. Halmayoni, at her pots, said nothing. Her shoulders carried the expression of a woman who does not need to speak because everything has been said correctly, and she has been making this teokboki for 31 years, and she will make it for 31 more. Some things do not require announcement. They just require showing up, every night, without being asked, without a guarantee, just showing up. And on the other side of that, if you are patient enough, and honest enough, and brave enough to keep walking toward the orange light even when you cannot yet see it from the street, on the other side of that is everything. If this story held you from the champagne glass all the way to this final scene, you already know what to do. Subscribe, like, and in the comments tell me, what was the moment across all 3 parts that you did not see coming? The building? In her name. Seo-jin calling Adana? Dr. Shin's counteroffer? Or Halmayoni coming out from behind her counter for the 2nd time? Tell me everything. Every single comment gets read. This story was always yours.